So this book, Bamidbar, is my favorite book of the Torah. I think there are a lot of different reasons why. First of all, it's getting on close to summertime. It's the time we go to summer camp. We're out of school for the summer. My birthday's in the summer. I've always loved the summertime for all of these reasons. So I think that's part of it. Also, in the book of Bamidbar, the Jewish people, we do a lot of complaining. And it's fairly entertaining to read about. Also, there's this episode where Moses gets very angry, which has some not so great consequences, but still kind of interesting to see our greatest leader get so upset. Also, in the book of Bamidbar, there are snippets of ancient poetry kind of showing up throughout. And last and certainly not least, the story of the talking donkey, which it's how can you miss that one? So there are lots of directions to go with the book of Bamidbar. Even starting with the name Bamidbar, it's translated in two different ways, wilderness and desert. Well, okay, so a desert is a type of wilderness. The wilderness is a more correct translation. But what does it mean to wander in the wilderness anyway? And why did we, the Jewish people, spend so much time wandering in the wilderness between Mount Sinai and our promised land? That's a whole other question direction we could explore. And then also a drash that I read about and was also talking with Cantor about earlier this week, Midbar and Medaber. So this idea of Midbar, the wilderness, a barren wasteland, Medaber, speaking, when speaking is so important in Jewish culture, and also God created the world with speech, and so we move from the barren wilderness to the rich interpretation of speech. That's a whole other direction we can go. So I was thinking about all these different directions, and I was sitting down to do some studying this week. I went to a favorite website of mine where I like to listen to Torah classes. I went to the homepage, fully intending to click directly on the link for the Parsha class, but I found this big old picture. This is the problem with the internet, right? You can get distracted. And so I found a big old graphic, and it was very eye-catching, and it said, "How do I make coffee on Shabbat?" And I was like, coffee and Shabbat are two of my favorite things. I have to stop everything I'm doing and click on this. And also, and I wanted to bring it to us to study this morning because it's on the topic of kashrut. Now, kashrut is something that, honestly, I struggle with personally, but I observe it. Even when I'm eating vegetarian food, this was back before I've had some moments of thinking, well, I'm eating vegetarian food, kashrut doesn't apply to me. Now, actually, I learned as I studied more about kashrut that is incorrect. The answers to why are very, very long and complicated, great things to talk about at Kiddush. But also, my relationship with kashrut really deepened when I worked at Ramah in the Rockies for 2 summers, and I was the kashrut supervisor for the second of those summers in the kitchen. And so not only was I thinking about kashrut on behalf of myself, but on behalf of the entire community. And one of the things that I came to understand about kashrut is that kashrut is one of the most powerful expressions of Jewish identity. It's intended to keep us together as Jews. Now, the essence of my struggle with kashrut is that in keeping us together as Jews, it's also intended, and this is evident in the ancient literature, to keep us separate from non-Jews. And as someone who's part of an interfaith family, I struggle with that. But still, I observe kashrut. And back to our question, how do you make coffee on Shabbat? Okay. So the question, I'll just read this directly from the text of the website, first of all. So the question is, how can I make a cup of hot coffee on Shabbat when cooking is forbidden? So first thing to know, cooking is forbidden on Shabbat. Of course, the definition of what cooking is highly technical, but so cooking on Shabbat is forbidden. We'll hold it right there. And so here's the answer. Set up a hot water urn before Shabbat. So you're not actively boiling the water on Shabbat. So you have the hot water urn, you plug it in, you leave it on for all of Shabbat, and there you have your hot water. But cooking can still occur by pouring boiling liquid over food, even after it has been removed from the heat source. So you avoid cooking the coffee by making sure the water has lost its full cooking ability, by cooling it, by transferring it to another vessel before you pour it on top of your coffee grinds or your instant coffee. Okay, so if you're making instant coffee, here are the 4 easy steps. First, you set up your hot water urn. Then you take the water from your urn, you transfer it to a vessel. Then you transfer it from the vessel to the coffee cup. And then you add your instant coffee and milk and sugar. The website was not thinking of me because I'm more of like an almond milk, sometimes like Coffee Mate and Splenda, but there you go. And so that's for instant coffee. For pour-over coffee, you do the same thing, but you pour, so you set up the urn, transfer the hot water into a vessel, and then pour the water from the vessel over the coffee grinds, let it filter through, and then you add your milk, sugar, Coffee Mate, Splenda. I have an uncle that likes honey in coffee, which I think is strange, but you could do that. And the article concludes by saying, French presses, timers, and other methods of making coffee are beyond the scope of this discussion, so talk to your rabbi. and I mean, this is true, but I wanted to highlight this concept of talk to your rabbi. What does that even mean? The way that the halachic system works is that you get to choose which rabbi you follow, but you only have one. You don't kind of pick and choose depending on the situation. You only have one. So my rabbi is Rabbi Elliot Dorff. When I have halachic questions that I don't know the answer to, he's the person that I go to, and that's the one person. I also wanted to talk about this concept of, so talk to your rabbi. There's this idea, it's an Aramaic term that's called mara da'atra. It translates to the authority of the place. So this idea of you have one rabbi that you talk to for answers, you don't go picking and choosing, and a community similarly only has one rabbi, at least one rabbi at a time. So the halachic authority of this place, that's me. If you go over to Temple Akiba, if you go over to Beit Teshuvah, if you go over to Sinai Temple over there, I don't have any say at any of those places, but here, the buck stops with me. And so this is how the halachic system works. And so this idea of we have questions about Jewish law and Jewish observance, and we only can go to one person for the answers, it's kind of an intimate process, right? It's like you're getting all up in my personal choices. It's not necessarily comfortable. But when you're Jewish, the communal precedes the personal. I think that not all of us here, but many of us are Americans. Some of us, like me, are from California, and those cultures are very, very focused on the individual. So this idea of the communal and preceding the personal might make us a little uncomfortable. I definitely get that. But especially after October 7th, and even before, as Jews, we know that we're all in this together. Something I was thinking about in just another sidebar in this regard, we have two new staff in our office, David and Aaron, and they're both amazing. And both of them wanted to come work for a synagogue after October 7th to be more involved in the Jewish community, which I think is such a beautiful thing. Okay, but seriously, we're gonna keep talking about kashrut, and we're also gonna get back to the parsha. It's gonna happen, okay? Because eventually, I finished reading about how to make coffee on Shabbat, and I clicked on the link I intended to click on, which was a library of parsha classes, and I clicked on one of my favorite teachers, Rabbi Weisberg, and she teaches a parsha class that is wonderful. And so Parshat Bamidbar. Okay, getting back to it, Parshat Bamidbar. We've got names, we've got numbers, it's the book of Numbers. And so if you were listening to the Torah reading with your ears or with your eyes, you'll remember that this parsha is all about names, it's all about the organization of the Israelite camp, and then we're taking a census. Okay, so names, encampment, census, a lot of details. So the upshot here is that everyone is counted. Everyone is counted because everyone counts. Everyone is significant. And so actually, Rebbe Simchana Weisberg took this idea and connected it to an idea in kashrut that I promise is even more obscure than what we already talked about, so we're warmed up, we're ready to go. This is from Talmud Beitza, page 3b, and the discussion is also picked up in the halachic literature in the Shulchan Aruch, the section called Yoradea, 110, section 1. And the statement is as follows: an entity which is counted can never be nullified. An entity which is counted can never be nullified. So what this means for us as we study the Parsha is when we're counted, we know that we matter. Some of us come here on Mondays and Thursdays at 7 in the morning to daven, which I do, which is a wonderful thing to do. And all of us know in that process that each of us matters. We have to get to that count of 10 to make a minyan. And so every time we're counted and we matter. So now for the technical kashrut details. Hold on to your hats, your kippot. Under certain circumstances, not all circumstances, under certain circumstances, certain food items are nullified when mixed with a quantity 60 times their volume. Now this doesn't apply on Pesach. Passover has a whole separate system of But under certain circumstances, certain food items are nullified when mixed with a quantity 60 times their volume. So the classic example when anyone is talking about kashrut talks about you've got a pot of meat soup, and what if some milk falls into the meat soup? Oh my goodness. So if you have like a small pot of meat soup, you have a big old glass of milk, someone pours the glass of milk into the meat soup. How does this even happen? But if this were to happen, the entire mixture would be forbidden. Now, but if you have a really, really large pot of meat soup and you somehow have one drop of milk falling in so that the volume of the meat soup is 60 times or more the volume of the milk that falls in, the milk is considered nullified and non-existent, and you can still eat the soup. Hooray for soup. However, an object that is sold by count, or sold by unit, is considered significant and can't be nullified. So the favorite example of this is eggs. So whole eggs of a kosher bird, like a chicken, if you have a bunch of chicken eggs that are mixed with whole eggs of a non-kosher bird, like a seagull, even if there's only one seagull egg mixed with a whole bunch of chicken eggs that's 60 or more times the count or volume, it doesn't matter. The seagull egg, because eggs are sold by unit, they are counted. That seagull egg and the chicken eggs is not nullified, and the whole mixture of eggs is forbidden. So here is the kashrut-inspired drash from Rabbi Simchana Weisberg, because we are counted in Parashat Bamidbar, we as Jews, we can never be nullified. Now, in case you missed it, this world is not majority Jewish. In fact, we're only 0.2% of the global population. Clearly, the Jewish people is significant and not nullified. And in the times that we try to nullify ourselves by assimilating into the broader population, it doesn't really work that well. We have to be ourselves. We each uniquely count. We each have an irreplaceable role to play in the world, and part of this, for us, is being Jewish. So we've got to stick together, especially after October 7th, but even before. People are coming into our community just to be around others, just to come into our social hall and see Israeli flags on the tables, just to be around others who want to support Israel just like them. In this world, we have to be our authentic selves and our authentic Jewish selves. There are lots of ways to do this. As your Mara D'Atra, I can recommend some classic halachic options. But Rabbi Simchana Weisberg emphasizes, and I agree with her, that whether or not we're behaving exactly as we should halachically, we count in the eyes of God. We are loved in the eyes of God. So this is what I want to leave us with, inspired by Rabbi Weisberg. We each exist uniquely because each of us has a unique, irreplaceable, and non-substitutable purpose. It's our obligation to find that purpose and to actively be ourselves. This is not easy, and I would argue it's even harder because we're Jews. So we have to stick together. Being together as Jews enables us to be our most authentic selves, and including all of the Jewish aspects of ourselves, because it's important, we count, and we have to bring ourselves to the world. Shabbat Shalom.